Secrets of Amenhotep III, Egypt's most magnificent pharaoh. Please remember to like and subscribe, it really does help us build the channel. Imagine a time when Egypt was at the height of its power, its borders secure, its wealth unmatched, its monuments rising higher and grander than ever before. This was the age of Amenhotep III, a pharaoh whose reign became a golden chapter in ancient history. Known as the Sun King of Egypt, Amenhotep III presided over an era of peace, prosperity, and dazzling cultural achievements. But behind the glittering facade of temples and festivals, his rule also set the stage for one of Egypt's most dramatic religious revolutions. Today, we explore the life, reign, and legacy of Amenhotep III, the pharaoh who transformed Egypt into a land of splendor. Chapter 1: Early Life and Rise to the Throne. Amenhotep III was born around 1386 BCE, during Egypt's powerful 18th dynasty, a time when the empire stretched from the Euphrates River in the north to the Nubian deserts in the south. He was the son of Pharaoh Thutmose IV and Queen Nutmuia, a woman of noble but somewhat mysterious origins. Unlike many princes who rose to the throne after years of conflict, Amenhotep's path was far smoother. Egypt was stable, wealthy, and respected across the ancient world. His father had secured Egypt's borders and strengthened ties with foreign kingdoms, ensuring that his son inherited not a land in crisis, but one at its peak. Still, the young prince's future was not entirely guaranteed. In royal courts, succession could be complex. Rivals, court officials, and even foreign allies often watched closely to see who would inherit the throne. But Amenhotep was favored. He carried a name meaning Amun is satisfied, linking him directly to the powerful god Amun, worshipped as king of the gods. That divine connection gave him legitimacy and authority before he even wore the crown. When his father died, Amenhotep was still a teenager, likely only 12 or 13 years old. Despite his youth, he was crowned pharaoh of Egypt, taking full command of an empire that was already the world's superpower. To support him, a network of experienced advisors, priests, and generals ensured stability during his early years. But Amenhotep would not remain a boy king for long. Even at a young age, he understood the importance of image and symbolism. He portrayed himself in inscriptions and statues as a warrior, hunter, and godlike figure. He ordered images showing him slaying lions, riding chariots, and towering over his enemies, whether or not he personally fought many battles. These early depictions weren't just for vanity. They sent a powerful message: Egypt had a strong, divine ruler, chosen by the gods, capable of protecting his people and commanding respect from foreign lands. By the time he reached adulthood, Amenhotep was already laying the foundations for what would become a reign of unparalleled wealth, diplomacy, and monumental achievements. Chapter 2: The Golden Age of Egypt. Amenhotep III's reign lasted nearly 4 decades, from around 1386 to 1349 BC, and it is remembered as the height of Egypt's power, prosperity, and cultural brilliance. Unlike the warrior pharaohs who came before him, Amenhotep rarely needed to march into battle. Egypt's enemies were subdued, its borders were secure, and its wealth flowed like the Nile. Instead of war, Amenhotep wielded diplomacy and wealth as his greatest weapons. His empire was so rich in gold, mined from Nubia in the south, that foreign kings called Egypt the Golden Land. Letters from Babylonian and Mitanni rulers, preserved on clay tablets known as the Amarna letters, show how eagerly they sought Egypt's friendship. They begged for gold, jewels, and even Egyptian brides. But Amenhotep didn't just give, he negotiated. He married foreign princesses from Mitanni, Babylon, and Syria, weaving an intricate web of alliances that ensured peace and cemented Egypt's position as the world's superpower. At home, Egypt flourished. With no wars draining resources, Amenhotep poured his wealth into art, literature, religion, and architecture. Temples glowed with new decorations, sculptors created more lifelike statues than ever before, and scribes recorded hymns praising the king as a living god. This era was so peaceful and abundant that some historians compare Amenhotep III to Louis XIV of France, calling him Egypt's Sun King. Like Louis, he surrounded himself with magnificence, transforming his court at Thebes into a dazzling center of culture, diplomacy, and divine power. It was a time when Egyptian influence reached beyond its borders, not through conquest, but through prestige. Neighboring kingdoms admired Egypt's art, copied its styles, and sought its approval. The Nile Valley was not only the beating heart of the ancient world, it was also its shining crown. For the people of Egypt, this golden age brought stability, food, and work. Farmers thrived along the fertile banks of the Nile, laborers found employment in great building projects, and priests enjoyed the king's generous patronage. Life under Amenhotep meant security and pride in belonging to the most glorious empire on earth. Chapter 3 The builder Pharaoh Amenhotep III was not just a king, he was a master of image making. He knew that power in Egypt was measured not only by armies and gold, but by the monuments that survived the ages. More than any pharaoh before him, Amenhotep reshaped the landscape of Egypt with colossal statues, temples, and cities designed to project his eternal glory. The Colossi of Memnon. Perhaps his most iconic creations are the Colossi of Memnon, two giant seated statues that still rise nearly 60 feet tall on the west bank of the Nile at Thebes. Carved from single blocks of stone weighing over 700 tons, they once flanked the entrance to Amenhotep's mortuary temple, the largest ever built in Egypt. Though the temple itself has long since crumbled, swallowed by floods and reused for later buildings, the colossi remain, silent guardians of a vanished wonder. In their time, these statues would have been breathtaking. Painted in vibrant colors, towering above visitors, they depicted Amenhotep not merely as a man, but as a god, immortal, eternal, unshakable. Travelers from Greece and Rome would later marvel at them, writing tales of their singing at dawn, caused by cracks in the stone that whistled in the morning air. Luxor Temple Amenhotep also transformed the city of Thebes, particularly the magnificent Temple of Luxor. He commissioned sweeping colonnades, vast open courtyards, and towering statues of himself that greeted worshippers at the gates. Here, the gods and the king were inseparable, with Amenhotep depicted not only as Pharaoh but as the divine son of Amun-Ra. Temples across the land, but his ambition was not limited to Thebes. Across Egypt, Amenhotep built or expanded temples dedicated to the gods, especially Amun, the chief deity of the empire. His construction projects stretched from Nubia in the south to Heliopolis in the north, leaving behind a trail of monumental architecture. In Nubia, at Celeb, Amenhotep built a temple of dazzling sandstone columns, decorated with inscriptions honoring himself as a living god. This was not simply a place of worship, it was a political statement, cementing Egypt's control over Nubian lands while elevating the king to divine status. Statues without number. Archaeologists estimate that more statues of Amenhotep III have been found than of any other pharaoh. From colossal stone figures towering over temple courtyards to delicate carvings of him alongside his queen Tia, his image was everywhere. These statues were not just art, they were propaganda. They reminded Egyptians that their king was eternal, unchanging, and inseparable from the gods. A pharaoh's architectural vision. In total, Amenhotep commissioned hundreds of structures, from shrines to palaces to temples. His reign became known as an age of builders, a time when stonecutters, sculptors, and laborers worked endlessly to glorify a king whose very identity was tied to the grandeur of his monuments. Through these buildings, Amenhotep ensured that his presence would never fade. Thousands of years later, his statues still gaze across the desert, his columns still rise toward the sky, and his temples still inspire awe. Chapter 4, The Festival. King Amenhotep III was more than a builder of temples, he was a master of ceremony. Few pharaohs understood the power of spectacle quite like he did, and during his reign Egypt became a stage for some of the most dazzling festivals in its history. The said festival, renewal of power. One of the most extraordinary traditions he embraced was the said festival. This ancient ritual, usually held after 30 years of a pharaoh's reign, was meant to renew the king's strength and prove he was still fit to rule both physically and spiritually. For most kings, it was a once-in-a-lifetime event. But Amenhotep broke tradition. He didn't celebrate just one said festival, he celebrated three, with the first one as early as his 30th year, and more following in quick succession. Some scholars believe he staged them to amplify his divine image, reinforcing himself not just as king, but as a living god. A nation in celebration. Imagine the scene, in Thebes, temples adorned with new decorations, banners fluttering in the breeze, and priests preparing elaborate rituals. Crowds of Egyptians gathered as Amenhotep appeared in ceremonial regalia, running a ritual circuit to prove his vitality. Drums thundered, incense filled the air, and hymns echoed across the Nile. The king, glowing in gold and fine linen, was paraded before his people, not as a mortal ruler, but as the embodiment of Horus, and the son of Amun-Ra. The festival was more than just a celebration, it was propaganda. It reassured Egyptians that their ruler's divine power was eternal and reaffirmed the prosperity of the land. Lavish banquets and foreign guests, but the grandeur didn't stop with rituals. The said festivals included enormous banquets, feasts, and offerings that showcased Egypt's abundance. Foreign envoys often attended, witnessing Egypt's wealth firsthand. For visiting rulers, these festivals sent a clear message: Egypt was unrivaled in power, culture, and divine favor. Other festivals and rituals. Amenhotep also presided over countless other religious ceremonies. He played a central role in the Opet festival, where the sacred bark of a moon was carried from Karnak to Luxor temple amid processions, music, and dance. These events blurred the line between king and god. Every ritual, every chant reinforced his image as Egypt's divine protector. The pharaoh as the sun. Through these festivals, Amenhotep III presented himself not only as king, but as the very embodiment of the sun's eternal cycle, dying and being reborn, renewing his strength, and ensuring Egypt's everlasting prosperity. For the people of Egypt, these spectacles were unforgettable. They didn't just see a man on the throne, they saw a radiant figure who guaranteed their survival and their place in a world blessed by the gods. Chapter 5, Family and the Shadow of Akhenaten. Behind the throne of Amenhotep III was not just a royal court, but a powerful family, whose influence would shape Egypt's destiny for generations. Queen Tia, the great royal wife. At the heart of this story stands Queen Tia, Amenhotep's beloved great royal wife. Unlike many queens before her, Tia was not of royal blood. Her father was a wealthy landowner and her mother a high priestess. Yet, Amenhotep raised her to equal status, granting her unprecedented power and visibility. Tia's name appears alongside her husband's in inscriptions, scarabs, and even on diplomatic correspondence. Foreign rulers addressed letters directly to her, seeking her advice or influence. She was portrayed as a partner, not a subordinate, a striking shift in Egypt's tradition of kingship. She became a trusted advisor, perhaps even shaping key decisions of state. To the Egyptian people, she symbolized strength, wisdom, and divine favor, a queen who was almost as important as the king himself. Children of the Sun King Amenhotep and Tia had several children, and their lineage would define Egypt's turbulent future. Among them was a son who would later rock Egypt to its core, Amenhotep IV, better known as Akhenaten. While still a prince, Akhenaten must have watched his father's reign unfold in glittering splendor, festivals, temples, and statues celebrating divine kingship. But some scholars believe that beneath the surface, Akhenaten was already being shaped by new ideas that would later lead to his radical religious revolution. The seeds of change. Amenhotep III had emphasized the worship of the sun god, Aten, alongside the traditional gods. Though he never abandoned the moon or the old pantheon, hints of solar devotion appear in his temples and art. Could this focus on the sun have influenced Akhenaten? Some historians suggest that Akhenaten's dramatic shift toward Aten as the sole god was not born out of nowhere. It may have been an extension, or even an exaggeration, of ideas already present in his father's reign. A dynasty of power and mystery. Tia outlived her husband and played a significant role in her son Akhenaten's reign, continuing her influence at court. As the Amarna period dawned, with its radical changes in religion and art, Tia's steady presence may have been a stabilizing force. But this dynasty also brought turbulence. After Akhenaten's rule, Egypt would face instability, mysterious pharaohs like Smenkhare and Tutankhamun, and eventually the decline of the 18th dynasty. Through it all, Amenhotep III's family cast a long shadow. His marriage to Tia reshaped the role of queens, and his son's vision reshaped the very foundation of Egyptian religion. Chapter 6: Decline and Health Struggles. Despite his immense wealth and unmatched power, Amenhotep III's later years were marked by a gradual decline in health. Archaeological evidence, including statues, reliefs, and mummies believed to be connected to him, suggests that he may have suffered from obesity, arthritis, and dental problems. Some scholars even speculate that these ailments made travel and ceremonial duties increasingly difficult, forcing the king to rely more heavily on his viziers and family members to manage state affairs. Letters from foreign rulers, preserved in the famous Amarna archives, paint a vivid picture of the challenges he faced diplomatically in his final years. Demands from neighboring kingdoms, requests for marriages, and pleas for military assistance piled up, and Amenhotep's responses were sometimes slow or carefully measured, reflecting the strain of maintaining Egypt's international dominance while battling personal frailty. Yet, despite these struggles, his authority remained unshaken. Monumental projects continued under his supervision, including statues, temples, and elaborate tombs that showcased the kingdom's wealth and artistic excellence. The king's image as the radiant, divine ruler, the Sun King, remained firmly ingrained in the minds of his subjects and foreign allies alike. Amenhotep III passed away around 1353 BCE, after nearly 40 years of rule. He left behind a kingdom resplendent with monumental architecture, intricate artwork, and an enduring legacy of prosperity and cultural achievement. His successors inherited not just a powerful throne, but also a vision of kingship that celebrated grandeur, diplomacy, and devotion to the gods, a vision that would shape Egypt for generations to come. Chapter 7: Legacy of the Sun King. Amenhotep III is remembered as one of Egypt's most remarkable rulers, a master builder, shrewd diplomat, and passionate patron of the arts. During his nearly 4-decade reign, Egypt reached the pinnacle of wealth, power, and cultural sophistication. The Nile Valley under his rule became the center of the ancient world, a hub of trade, political alliances, and artistic achievement. Luxurious palaces, sprawling temples, and colossal statues, many of which still awe visitors today, reflect his ambition to make Egypt not just powerful, but gloriously magnificent. His diplomatic acumen was equally impressive. Amenhotep maintained peaceful relations with powerful kingdoms such as Mitanni, Babylon, and the Hittites through carefully negotiated treaties, strategic marriages, and a network of gifts and alliances. These efforts ensured that Egypt remained not only dominant militarily but also respected and admired across the Near East. Yet, his legacy is nuanced. Amenhotep's elevation of the sun god, Aten, and his promotion of his own divine image may have unintentionally laid the groundwork for the religious revolution of his son, Akhenaten. By intertwining kingship and divinity so closely, he created a cultural and spiritual environment in which radical religious reforms could later take root, changes that would profoundly challenge traditional Egyptian beliefs. Beyond politics and religion, Amenhotep III's reign symbolized the ideals of beauty, opulence, and harmony. His monumental architecture, from the majestic temples at Luxor and Karnak to the awe-inspiring Colossi of Memnon, continues to capture the imagination of historians and travelers alike. His statues, eternally gazing over the Nile, remain a silent testament to a ruler who sought to embody the very brilliance of the sun itself. In the end, Amenhotep III was more than a king. He was a beacon of light in Egypt's long history, a ruler whose splendor and vision defined an era. His reign endures as one of the clearest examples of a civilization at its peak, blending power, art, religion, and diplomacy into a golden age that still echoes across millennia. If you enjoyed this journey into the life of Amenhotep III, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss more deep dives into the mysteries of ancient Egypt.